back to another episode of Conversations. It's always my favorite when we get started behind the scenes and both me and the guest are going to music because it's my music. I like it, but it's nice. And fun fact, we're talking about the language of movement today. So we probably wouldn't really be drinking our own Kool-Aid if we weren't getting a little bit of movement on. Welcome, everybody. As a note, because I always feel like when I have a guest, everybody's like, oh, this is a conversation between two people, but this is a conversation for all of us who are joining here today. So if you're joining us live, please make sure that you pop into the comments and say hello. Let us know you're here, but more importantly, let us know your thoughts. Let us know your expective. That's a combination between experience and perspective, just in case you're wondering. Okay. I just made it up and I was thinking both of those words at the same time. Let us know your experience. Let us know your perspective, your insight, your thoughts, your questions, because this conversation is for all of us. And the more people who get into the conversation, the more we all get to learn about the language of movement. And I'm so excited to have Irene here with me today for this conversation, because when we first connected, we were talking about movement and the language of movement. Hint, which is why this session is called what it is. But at the end of it probably was the middle of the conversation, somewhere in the conversation, something that became really obvious to me is that throughout our lives, our language of movement versus our language of language is deprioritized instead of prioritized. When we're kids, we get in trouble for throwing a tantrum, which is part of the language of movement. And the longer we spend in the corporate work environment, we just become chair sitters. And there's just not really enough language of movement in the conversation. Hence why we are here to have this conversation today with all of you lovely people, to just get it back into the conversation. So Irene, before we get too far into that conversation, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and why the language of movement is something that gets you so excited?
Yes, thanks for having me, Tracy. And everyone, I'm Irene Anggreeni, or in the Netherlands, and also in my home country, Indonesia, it's pronounced Irene, but I also respond with Irene. Who I am. I actually am a mental health coach, and I train as a dance movement therapist, and that's why kind of movement is really a big part of my life, also my work, and it's also part of my own transformation, my own healing. Yeah, so I'm a mental health advocate myself, and I have lived experience with depression and complex trauma, and how this kind of issues, this kind of challenge, it's not enough just to talk through it. It's not gonna solve anything. Yeah, maybe bring some awareness, but really to bring that change into my life, I really needed to get into movement and into action, and that's why kind of now connecting it also in our work life, at work and also in our personal life. I think we owe it to ourselves, to really nurture, that this non-verbal capacity of movement does not get lost. Because we are, I think now by the time we are adults, we can talk so much in maybe in more than one languages, but the language of movement also needs to be kept alive.
Well, and I think one of the most interesting things, and I watched this watching my son, who's 4 as well, from the personal branding perspective, but really movement is one of the first ways that we learn how to express ourselves, right? And we recently put my son into dance class, and it just is amazing to watch him. They do this kinder combo thing that does ballet and tap and jazz, and at the end of every class they get free expression time, and it's just, they had an open parent watching class the other day, and just so it just is amazing to watch what these kids do when it's just total freedom to do whatever you want, right? And mostly my son spins and hops, but that I think the farther we get down our journey of adulthood, the more and more that gets lost. So I mean, I know you've done a lot of research in the arena as well. And so can you share with us a little bit about what you know as to let's just talk about maybe why that happens first, and then also
Mm.
the downsides.
Yeah. I think you picture you mentioned the word freedom, like that's kind of like how we were when we were born and developmentally, as we from a tiny baby, we grow into a toddler, into a child, like we really figure out about the world through movement before we learn language. Yeah. So perhaps like the first 3 years, like we are just kind of, we just move. And also, it doesn't mean that we are not learning anything. We actually absorb a lot from our environment, from our parental figures. A lot of this embodied language. And developmentally, like a kind of there's a lot in the framework of movement as well. Kind of we have these movement patterns, like babies, like they don't just start walking, but they first like starts with maybe rolling, and then crawling, and then maybe sitting, and that's all kind of that also has direct connection with the development of the brain, and also our musculature. And that word freedom, it really stays with me, because I think as we grow, maybe like as we grow into a child, into a teenager, and then into an adult, like there are more and more layers, um, perhaps it's from our school, or you're not supposed to do that, or perhaps like it's just like, you cannot just jump around on the street just like that, kind of be normal. And I think this layer kind of it's a bit like when we experience that throughout our time growing up, then like slowly we also sort of like, oh, okay, so maybe I shouldn't do that. And I think that's why it's even more important to create our own space, wherever that is, where we feel safe and we feel brave also to re-explore those movements. And it's kind of, there are a lot of benefits for that, because our brains are really plastic. Kind of, it's still changing, no matter how old we are. And with movement, like we keep like these connections alive. So that's why it's really important, Tracy.
Well,
Mm.
okay, so I'm having two things
Mm.
that are coming to me right now. The first one is that I was standing in line at the post office the other day, and it's the
Yeah.
holidays, so you got to wait in line to send your packages. And then you got the Christmas music playing in the store, right? And
Okay.
I am terrible at standing still when music is on. I gotta tap a toe or
Me
sway or
too.
something, right? And it feels like really rigid if I can't do that, if I can't express that way.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten to the point where, like, I don't care if anybody else in this line cares that I'm dancing. I am here and I'm waiting. I might as well have some fun while I'm waiting.
Mm.
So I started dancing. The lady behind me started singing, and I was like, we are now turning the post office into our own musical theater studio, and I kind of love it. But it was just like, it was really interesting because it really speaks
Mm.
to those like places, right? Like, where is this
Yeah.
appropriate? Where should you or where shouldn't you? Like, if you're
Mm.
in dance class, it's okay to express through dance. But if you're in the post office, then it's not. And you're like,
Mm.
but who says? Right? And I think a lot of times when we challenge that status quo, it's fine, right? Like,
Yeah.
we put a lot of these limitations on ourselves. But this is now what it's making me lead me into my second point, is that my husband and I have been having this conversation about sitting at the dinner table to eat dinner,
Mm.
right? And it's a very, I don't know worldwide, but in North America, very standard expectation is that you sit at the
Yeah.
table and you sit at the table until you're finished eating, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it just is so hard for my son to do that, right? And I watch him struggle with it every single day. And
Mm.
we don't always eat breakfast. We don't always eat lunch at the table, right? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're eating on the go, things like that. But at dinner, we try to always like sit and have family
Mm.
dinner. And it's so hard for him. And it makes me think, like, like our this is where we start. This is where we start these kinds of limiting things, right? Like
Yeah.
yes, you can dance but not during dinner, right? And like,
Mm.
to be fair, I like, if you're eating a carrot, then
Yeah.
maybe just like chew it and then dance, because I don't want you to choke on it. Now
Yeah.
that's a safety
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
like, these are like the places where we start
Mhm.
to incorporate some of those things. So like, based on what you know, Irene, in that scenario for a 4-year-old, like, what does that start to tell
Mm.
us about movement? And then how do we start to build, like, I can see this, my mind is theoretically projecting this to
Mm.
like, well, this is why it makes sense for us to just sit and work, right? Because we just sit and
Mhm.
eat. So then we just sit and work, and then we just sit and watch TV, and then we just
Yeah.
sit.
Yeah. 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 Sitting, yeah, sedentary lifestyle. But I think like I think maybe I feel it too. As a child, like yeah, there are kind of course, like there are certain rules, perhaps like what's accepted at the dinner table. But I got a feeling, like that it's not also when we share this with the child, like not to make it like oh, it's really bad, it's really serious if you're moving like that, but kind of to acknowledge, oh yeah, I see that you still like to move around, like how can we make that this excess energy, how can we
Mm,
channel it, and then like yeah, see what you need, can I help you, and then all right, then we can eat our dinner afterwards, and kind of not to yeah not to kind of overgeneralize, hey, it's really bad, like movement, like too much movement, you're just too hyperactive, because for some people, I think they also have yeah, like there are different styles of people with kinesthetic learning, or like you have to move around, you have to fidget a lot to figure out stuff, and that's also okay. Yeah, I think it speaks also about the diversity of the movement preferences
mm.
among people. Some people are perhaps like by nature they are okay, I'm just quiet still. But some people like to fidget a lot and
Yeah. Well, I think this is really interesting because, well, first of all,
mm,
Jessica is sharing that you are the person at the grocery
mm,
store singing, and we should go shopping together, even though we don't live anywhere close to each other. None of us do, but that's okay. We'll find a way to go shopping together. Um, but I think this is really interesting in the conversation too about neurodiversity, right?
yeah.
Because like, I myself am a fidgeter, and it's so funny because I used to, my outlet for fidgeting was to pick my nails, right? And like,
Ah,
because that was like a very like
yeah.
acceptable way to
Mm,
fidget, but also a very punished way of fidgeting. And it took me a really long time to get
mm,
over the fact that like I
mm,
am this. This is part of me, right? And it's nothing to be ashamed of. But it's actually because like now I have a fidget, and if I
mm.
can just fidget, it much easier, much
Yeah,
easier
yeah,
for me to
yeah.
focus. And I think that that is the important, like an important piece of this conversation, because when we take out like a language, the language, that's why we called this topic this, you guys, the
Mm,
language of movement. It is a language, right? And when we say we're going to take away the language of movement and or punish someone for using the language of movement instead of using the societally dictated language, which is speaking, this
mm,
is like not helpful
mm.
for a lot of people, right?
Yeah, and I think that there's also with regard to communication, and we are doing that all the time as humans. um, yeah, there is like a big part of it is actually the non-verbal part. It's not what you say literally, but really how you say it, and also the intonation of your, of how you say it, and also your body language, your face expression, and that's something we as humans naturally picks up on. Um, yeah, but that's kind of really the, when we talk about diversity, there's also really diversity of movement. Like when we
Mm,
talk about this, okay, this subtle movement, that's perhaps like, yeah, kind of really on the micro level. But then like we also have like a, yeah, kind of movement we do, like when when we are expressing joy, for instance, or when we are doing sports, or when we have to, I don't know, move a big heavy cupboards, like that's also a language. And I just want to mention this before I forget, because naturally we are moving the whole time, yeah, kind of most of the time we are probably not aware of it, but like when we start to to look more deeply, there's kind of, all right, there's a lot more to unpack actually in how we move, in kind of the tempo or the rhythm we move. And also yeah, I was talking about the how big the movement is. So there's so much there to kind of to reflect on, and also to connect with, okay, what does it mean to me, to move in that way.
Yeah. Well, I
Mm,
really love this phrase, diversity of movement, because for one, everybody likes to talk
mm,
about diversity, but I don't think we really go a little bit deeper to understand like what it looks like to create space for
yeah.
diversity of movement. And to me, this really speaks to where like movement and personal branding align as well,
Mhm.
because like our individual movement or our own desire for movement seems really tied to like our own emotions, our own how we show up, right? Like how as we
Yeah,
show up as a mom or as a
yeah,
whatever part of identity that we
mm,
have, right? Like how we show up like that. And again, like for me, when that is restricted, then it feels like your personal brand now is being
yeah,
restricted, right? And so,
yeah.
um, like in your experience with some of the people that you've coached, what are some of the ways that people have started to find little ways to incorporate a more, let's call it expressive movement, because just not
Yeah.
movement for movement's sake, right? Because I know a lot of people be like,
Mm,
we still get that general narrative too, like you need to just work out and be fit,
yeah,
so go
movement for
for a run.
fitness. Yeah,
Right? And you're
yeah.
like, I actually, it's really funny. So,
Mm,
a quick personal story. When I was growing up, I used to play basketball.
mm,
And now I'm retired because I was always injured and I can't be that
mm.
injured anymore. Um, but we had the song Thunder by AC/DC in our warm up
Ooh,
playlist. And now when I hear that song, I just want to run. Right? Like it's like my personal expression for that song is to run. And I said that
yeah.
to my husband the other day, and he's like, there's no songs I hear that make me want to run. Like, that's fine, right? Like that's not the point. But it's just it's really interesting to look at those types of things and see, like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is expression for me, but it's not expression for you. So anyway, back to my question
Mm,
of like, how are some of the ways that we can like start integrating a little bit more of that personal expression movement into our
mm.
day?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I think, like the first step is, I would say, this is also from my personal journey. When I was struggling with my mental health, I was depressed, yeah, for a long time. And what I noticed when I started working with my body is that I have really such an armoring. Kind of like I'm quite stiff, and I don't dare to move so freely. Like I feel so constricted. And what worked, and also this is like what I encourage my clients, is really uh, to start already being aware of the whatever movement it is you do day to day. Maybe it's just, okay, from sitting down to standing up, or from walking, you are doing movement, or when you're cooking, when you're eating, those are all, yeah, kind of like, nothing special, it seems, but those are already, yeah, this movement we are familiar with. um, but then also to, yeah, kind of to start adding some spices perhaps. And that's really what I do with the with my coaching, because we need actually this diversity of movement, the variation of it, to, yeah, kind of to operate in this world. Yeah, because we cannot be just one way. um so yeah, like in my training also, when I was learning to become a dance movement therapist, and that's what I use in my coaching. So I learned how to analyze movement. Yeah, so there are, for instance, like different qualities of movement. And like if we take the example again, like pushing a big heavy cupboard, like we really need a lot of force and strength. But it's different, for instance, like if you're petting your cat, or I don't know, petting your son. And I mean, yeah, it's
My
a kind
son
of a
does have
different.
really soft hair, so yep.
Exactly, yeah. And those kind of being able to yeah, to be aware, like when am I using this certain quality, kind of pushing, forceful, powerful, and when am I doing okay, soft. And so that's kind of yeah, the space in my coaching that I create is really about that, kind of um to encourage people. So I analyze, like I see, okay, how their posture is, how they move about, and kind of to start from there, like, all right, like to test them a bit also.
Mhm.
Can I invite you to try, maybe like, I don't know, move bigger, or maybe like move not only with your hands but really with your belly or with your hips, and kind of then it's more integrated. And yeah, there's like a whole framework of this, movement analysis. I don't want to bore you, but if anyone wants to know, and they can come to me, I can tell you what it's all about.
Yeah, I think this is
Mm,
awesome because it speaks again to me of the diversity of
mm,
movement, right? It's
yeah.
it's interesting for me because I started off when I was very young dancing, and then I had to,
Mm,
like, dancing ballet, and then I had to go out of ballet because I
yeah.
had ligament problems in my knees. And so I started playing sports instead, and I played fastball and basketball and
Mm,
volleyball, and I ran track, and I did like all the things.
yeah.
But it was funny because I was always a multi-sport athlete. I never,
Yeah.
as much as I went to like basketball camp in the summers, and basketball probably ranked at the top of my favorite sports, it was never my only thing.
Yeah.
And then I started dancing again when I was in high school, and then I danced ballroom for a little while, and then I created my own cardio dance class. And I've always I've always really embraced that diversity because I think too, because I'm a
Mm,
person who, like, I just am like almost obsessed with
yeah.
variety. Like, I have a Peloton, and I was like really heavily into the cycling for a while, but
Mm,
then I'm like, I don't want to just cycle, right? So
yeah.
now I have this, like, I do yoga on Mondays, and I do cardio dance on
Mm,
Wednesdays, and then I do strength training on Thursdays, and then I do cardio dance on Saturdays, and then I ride on Sundays, right? And I have like every day is a
mm,
different thing, and I have rest days. And one of the other things that I have been incorporating into my day is like what I call creativity time. And it's
mhm.
very free. What feels creative today? Sometimes it's painting, sometimes
Yeah.
it's dancing.
Yeah.
And it's just really cool to find those. What I don't want anybody to take away from this is like, this is the right formula to get movement into your day, right? Like,
Absolutely.
this is the
Yeah.
right formula for Tracy to get movement into her day. It's not the
Mm,
right formula for everybody to get movement into their day. And so it's about exploring, like, what movement do
mhm,
you do? Maybe it's a high five, right? Like, when I do a high
mhm.
five, I just get this like awesome vibe. I don't know, it's kind of a weird example, but like, when you go for a walk, how do you feel, right? Like, I
Mhm,
love just walking, and I would much rather walk than run, unless
mm,
Thunder by AC/DC comes on, in which case I will run. But that's the thing. I would rather, like, maybe Jessica is in this category too, but like, if I'm in the grocery store and I have like tappy shoes on, I will tap dance down the aisle. And I'm not like the world's greatest tap dancer, right? So it's not like I'm a showstopper, but it's because it's fun for me. It feels good.
mm.
And so I think it's just a really great opportunity to like talk about, like, what are the
Yeah.
things that give you expression. And like Andrew is saying, like, expression makes us want to do things, right? When we
Yeah.
feel like it's part of our expression, we'll do it. When we feel like it's not part of our expression, we won't want to.
Absolutely. Hell yeah. Yeah. Because like, when we are in touch with our self-expression, then yeah, we show up also more authentically as a person. And then we get in touch more with, what do we actually need in that moment.
Mhm.
And bravo, Tracy, like, kind of like you're, yeah, you're really incorporating different qualities of movement through, doing these different sports. And what you mentioned also about, as long as it's fun,
Mhm.
I think that's an important criteria, because that's really true. We all start from different place, and perhaps we need different style of movement, or different influences of movement in our life. And there's no recipe, there's no basic recipe. I think, like, we all need to figure it out ourselves. Okay, what makes it fun, and also, yeah, what makes it, just one thing is like, okay, what makes it enough variation, just like our diets. We
Right.
cannot just eat just rice every day, or just broccoli every day, but kind of to have a bit more flavor, because then that's also keep our brain stimulated, keeps our brain like optimum.
Mhm.
And that's also how we navigate life, kind of through movement. And we are more empowered when we have like more vocabulary, more language to express ourselves.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think this is really, like, we're talking so much about expression, right? And I feel like when I have the opportunity to express myself in a healthy way, right? Like, I'm teaching
Mm-hmm.
my son that punching somebody isn't the healthy expression
Mm-hmm.
of anger, right? We all have to learn it. But that this really, the ability for us to find ways and find time for this type of
Yeah.
expression is really something that leads to a different level of quality of life. And
Mm.
so I'd love to just talk a little bit about that, because at the end of the day, why this show exists is for us to have conversations that can create space for new ideas
Yeah.
in the work environment. And we have a very sedentary work environment right now, but I want to talk about the quality of life piece, because,
Mm.
like, talk about quiet quitting and the great
Yeah.
resignation and all of these things. There's no way that there's not a quality of life perspective happening here, right? So
Mm.
um in your experience, Irene, what are some of the ways that you've seen this type of expression contribute to quality of life in different ways? Like, maybe
Mm.
that's like mental wellness, physical
Yeah.
wellness, emotional wellness,
Yeah.
resilience, right? Like, I could I could probably just
All of
keep
those.
listing words for forever.
Yeah. 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 All of those, Tracy, kind of like our overall health, our well-being, mental, emotional well-being, and also our resilience. That yeah, I think there's a direct correlation there with, how we move, how we show up in our body, how we carry ourselves in the world out there. Um, and yeah, I want to acknowledge, like, it is, yeah, I think we are in this danger, which is called the sedentary lifestyle, like a lot of sitting. And practical things is really kind of, yeah, to find out, what's within your possibility, maybe in your office or in your home office, to create maybe more opportunity to stand up. Like now I'm actually just, kind of making my own makeshift standing desk. I just staple something up so I can stand up while doing this conversation with. But it is also, yeah, kind of, there is, there's something that's called the sitting disease. Yeah, that's really like when we are sitting too much or being so much inactive, that affects also a lot of things, with our uh, yeah, kind of, there could be some chronic disease if we are doing that, for a long period of time, including also our mental health can deteriorate when we do that too long.
Mhm.
And yeah, to remember really, oh, okay, like, kind of to bring regular regular movement, like that we don't sit too long, like for more than half hour, kind of like, I think, yeah, the recommended is really to break the sitting every half hour.
Mhm.
So
Well,
that's a practical thing.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I want to tie in what Jessica's saying here, because she's saying for her it's all about the
Mm,
music make move. I can't read
yeah.
apparently. Music makes movement feel natural. for me. Much harder to move without
Yeah.
music.
Mhm.
I did it. You guys didn't read it.
Mm,
And for me, it's very similar, right? Like, and I have.
mm,
It's funny. I don't know who else is watching who uses Spotify, but I do. And then Spotify tells you, like, what are your top songs of the year? What type of music do you like? And all these things. And like, apparently, the Encanto soundtrack
mm.
is the thing I play the most often. And
Okay.
it's really interesting because that soundtrack in particular just makes me want to move and like dance around the room like I'm a ballerina, although I am by no means a
Mm,
ballerina, right? Like it does it makes the movement easy. So um music, I'm sure music in general is one of those big ones that helps make movement easy. But Irene, are there other things that you've experienced with your clients in your own experience that are other contributors that make movement feel easy?
that makes movement easy. I think also doing it together makes it easy.
Mhm.
Kind of it's in our human nature also to mirror each other. You know, like if I, yeah, kind of like I got a really bouncy feeling right now.
And then I start bouncing, and then Jessica starts bouncing, and then
Exactly. Yeah,
Andrew
we
starts
can do
bouncing.
this, you
Pretty
know,
soon,
like
everybody's just grooving.
exactly. Kind of, yeah, because it is, it's also, you know, what movement does also, it's, and music as well. It's really connecting people.
Right.
And especially in a lot of cultures, there's also this, yeah, dance circle, you know, kind of like to support someone, even like through difficult times, like they sometimes have that ceremony like dance in circle. um yeah, kind of that, yeah, so like other people makes movement easier. um what else? Yeah, I think like, you know, if even if there's no music, we can listen to our own breathing.
Mm.
Hmm. And also that's you know, something that we could tune in actually, because with every movement, even now I'm speaking, yeah, it's also a lot of movement here going on, kind of the certain muscles have to work, and that yeah, there's somewhere there a connection with our breath.
Mm.
And you know, like if we could even like if it's a simple movement, I don't know, a movement, a stretch, or a walk in the park, to connect with the rhythm of the breath. That's, yeah, that's a, I'm touching now, you know, that's kind of a mindfulness practice actually, to be aware
Mhm.
of the breath. But also we can do it, you know, not only sitting in meditation, but we can bring that in our daily movement, so that we have that rhythm from
Yeah.
within. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is really fun to think about that connection,
Mm,
right? Because what this is making me think is that my son, he doesn't want to get dressed, right? So I try to
mm,
make it fun. So
yeah.
I turn lots of things into songs, right? So like now we have a song that goes like put your pants on, and and because we have that, we can like dance to it now.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
there's the opportunity to express ourselves in a silly made up
Mm,
song. Um and so I do think, again, like it's really cool just to start exploring the ways for you that allow you access to
mm,
that space, right? Okay, so now I want to transition this into the workplace, because I feel like a
mm,
lot of us maybe feel handcuffed
mm,
into what type of movement is available in the
yeah.
workplace, especially when sitting at your desk for 8 hours a day, including eating
Mm,
lunch at your desk by yourself, is celebrated. And there are,
mm,
unfortunately, still a lot of organizations that celebrate those types of things.
okay.
So, specifically in the work environment, Irene, what are
Mm,
some of the ways that you've seen people kind of integrate more movement
mm,
into a work day? Let's talk about working in an office first, and then
yeah,
we'll talk about working from home, because that
yeah,
poses a whole bunch of different challenges.
yeah, yeah. I think it really starts with the awareness, Tracy, with the education that sitting is dangerous, actually.
Mm.
I don't know if you know this, the Dilbert comics.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. There's actually one about sitting. I can share with you later. But yeah, just to get you the stats, it's actually yeah, the fourth, what is it called? The fourth biggest factor for early deaths. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, now I'm bringing a very sober theme,
Yeah.
but but it is really, if we do just a bit of research about sitting disease, if you Google it, like, I'm sure you will get a lot of explanation why that is um, yeah, dangerous, like for the long-term health, but also just just short-term health is also impacted, when we're sitting that long. And with this, kind of, now that I'm also aware of this, like, I really create for myself, like, okay, what are within my possibility now, to break my sitting bouts, to make it, like I don't know, maybe set a reminder or yeah, a timer like every half hour, and just in general, like, do more movement. Like, if there's an elevator, no, I'd rather take the stairs, or I can get the coffee all the way in the kitchen. I don't ask someone to bring it to me, or ask
Andrew
your
is sharing. He always goes to the far
exactly.
bathroom.
That's the spirit, Andrew. Yeah, if you go by car to your workplace, like, try to park it as far away from the building and get some movement. And I think what's also trendy is like these walking meetings. I don't know if that's a thing in North America, but it's something that can be done really easily, especially if you're meeting one on one. Okay, hey, how about we take a walk and we discuss our project, um, and yeah, basically, like, inserting all these mini moments, all those actions counts towards
Mhm.
our long-term health.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
When I was in corporate, one of the things that my team did was we had like a daily team
Mm.
huddle, which was supposed to be like 5 minutes long. But it was never 5 minutes long because people had more things to talk about. And what we would do in the summertime anyway, because I'm in Canada, and in the winter, like it was minus 29 the other day and the air hurt your face. Right. So
Mm.
it's much harder to do outdoor movement in weather like that. But in the summer, for sure, we would do walking
Yeah.
meetings because you don't need, like, I'm not making a presentation or anything right now. We're
Mm.
just like talking. Um, and it was way more productive than the ones that we
Yeah.
did just like standing in a
Oh,
circle.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just was really interesting because you got the fresh air, you've got the movement, and
Mm.
you've got like a different level of camaraderie when you are moving together, right? And so it's it's interesting to like find those examples in your own experience when you're like, oh yeah,
Mm.
that was super productive. I had
Yeah.
a I did a really fun challenge with a coworker one day that was like, okay, every time we're walking, because we worked in a really small office, right? So even to
Mm.
walk across the office like 20 steps, right? You don't
Mm.
have to walk very far. And so we were like, okay, every time we're walking, we're just gonna lunge. Like lunge walk all day, right? And it was just like kind of a like fun activity. But then you also, like, those types of activities encourage you to move more, right? Then you're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, this kind of feels fun. I'm just gonna
Mhm.
lunge all day. Right?
Mm.
And people might think you look crazy. But it is what it is if you feel like you're being expressed through the movement. So I think it's important. I don't, well, I don't like to say push the boundaries. I love to say push the
Mm.
boundaries, right? But everybody decides what
Stretch
boundaries are safe.
stretch the boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, stretch.
Just like,
Gentle. Yeah.
like a balloon, it's like stretchy. You don't have to pop the boundaries,
Yeah.
but like, and just to see, right? Just to explore, is there a way that I could express more through movement? Is my team
Mhm.
open to having a walking
Yeah.
meeting for this type of meeting, right? Is my office open to doing a squats challenge or
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just making stuff up, but these are just like, if it's I really love this example, and there's a personal example of mine too. So in my very first job, I was very underworked. right? I had about 2 hours of work to do a day. And it was one of those jobs where you're supposed to like sit and work for 8 hours a day.
Mm.
And so I was like, well, I might as well do something with my time. And I created the Passport to Fitness program. And what it was is every day at lunch for 30 minutes, we would do some kind of activity. So some
Mm.
days we would go walking, and some days we would do like a stretch and strength.
Mm.
And there was someone else who worked at the company who was a yoga instructor. So she did a yoga class and I did a dance class. And we just did like, the whole point was just to move. And it was
Mm.
to move together, and also not to move to the degree where you're like overly sweaty for the rest
Yeah.
of the day, because we didn't have showers at the office or anything like that. So it wasn't about like getting it like hardcore cardio workout in 30
Yeah.
minutes. It was just
Mhm.
about like moving together. And it was just like the camaraderie that came out of it was so amazing. And then there was one lady who ended up losing 75 pounds just because she started
Nice.
moving for 30 minutes at lunch every day. And it
Yeah.
was like, these are the types of things that we don't extrapolate out, right? But this is what movement does.
Yeah.
And it like keeps our joints limber, and it keeps us, dare I say it, Irene, it keeps us younger.
Yeah. Sure.
I can say what I want. It's my show. I have no scientific proof for that.
Maybe there's a science.
I'm
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
somewhere has studied it.
Yes. Mhm.
But very minimally, to me
Mm.
anyway, my experience is that when I get more movement in my life,
Yeah.
I feel younger. So my body is still the same age it is, but
Yeah.
I feel younger.
I want to make a connection there because movement is indeed can be really restorative. And yeah, when we experience stress or whatever, like some anxiety, we worries about our work or whatever it is. Yeah, I think that accelerates aging really because there's like all these like emotions, like heavy emotions, stress, whatever. It triggers these biochemical reactions in our body. We probably are not aware of all of it that's happening, but we might feel maybe sometimes some sensation. Oh, I got like some, I don't know, a knot in my stomach, or oh, my chest feels so heavy. Like those are some of the signal that our body gives. But then, like, yeah, actually, like movement helps to flush out all these biochemicals, and then kind of our body comes back to its balance, and then we don't age so fast, because like all this stress and whatever, it really does the faster aging. So yeah, I think there's some, we can work on this theory.
Yeah.
It keeps you younger. Yes, why not?
So come back a year from now, and Irene and I will have scientific proof that this is true. Or we'll not have scientific proof, but we'll
Or
have tried to find.
lived experience. Yeah, I think lived experience is more important even than whatever the science say. It can say anything, but I think what's most important is our lived experience. And yeah, Tracy, you feel younger when you are in movement. Yeah, so go for it, because that's what matters the most, is what we feel inside.
It's true. And
Mm.
I'm thinking about, I'm very lucky. I still have 3 of my grandparents, and like my oldest grandmother will be 92 in March.
Mm.
Um, and she, like, curling is one of the most,
Okay.
it's a big thing in Canada.
All right.
And she curled all the way up until she was like 88, I think. And
Oh.
and she always was doing that movement. And my other grandparents have like very sedentary, here's my
Mm.
recliner, let's watch TV. And like,
Mm.
to be fair, you're retired, right? So like, to some degree, you want to enjoy life, right? But it's very drastic in
Yeah.
their, like, how they show up now, right? Like, my grandma, who's 91, is like,
Mm.
my cousin got married this summer and she was dancing at the dance.
Mhm.
Right. And like, my other grandfather, who is 88, now can't walk anymore, and has to use a wheelchair. And that's mostly just because his muscles forgot how to do the job of walking. And I can see the difference in the quality of life,
Mm.
in the 2 different scenarios. And I think like that in itself for me anyway as is a catalyst for the benefits of
Yeah.
movement. Okay, so we talked a little bit about like the
Mm.
corporate work environment. Now, I also want to talk about the remote work environment
Mhm.
because in our remote work environments, we mostly have TVs. And a lot of people will just like go from
Mhm.
work and not even commute anymore and just sit and
Mm.
watch TV. Now, there's a whole bunch of other contributing factors and work and how you feel at work and your experience and all those things, which specifically we're not here to talk about today, although they have been
Mm.
talked about on many other of the conversation shows. But what are some of the things that can kind of kick us into gear, Irene, when we're getting just like, dare I say it, lazy at home?
And you
Let's
know
call
what,
it what
Tracy?
it is, people. Let's call it
Yeah,
what it is.
I've been there also, I felt like, yeah, okay, like, it's just like so easy, everything's so reachable. And then I started to realize how it's impacting me quite negatively, like I cannot really switch off. And, yeah, each time I see my or my work environment, I get a bit of anxious feeling.
Mm.
And then I started to create actually some ritual, and of course ritual involving movement. And I'm glad, like I have here some space that I could designate as this is my office, my home office. And then, like, if I want to switch off from work, I actually have to walk and go up the stairs, and that's the living room. And then it's already kind of like, this passage. Like, it's not that big. I don't have a castle, yeah, but it's just like a few meters, but with full awareness. Hey, I'm leaving work behind, and now I'm entering this relaxing zone. And to have that, that switch, more conscious. And of course, we also need to bring ourselves through movement, walking perhaps, but we can also dance, dance,
We just
dance along.
chasse down the
Exactly,
room. Yep.
sase or whatever, to make that transition more conscious.
Yeah, I think
Mm.
that's a really great point because that I think that was the biggest thing I experienced when I started working from home full time was that I didn't have a split zone anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like I used to have to commute in traffic, and that not my preferred way of movement is sitting in a car moving somewhere, but it at least gave me that space to
Mm.
create the separation. And then it was really hard to have that space. And it's been really interesting because one of the things personally for me that I struggled with for a long time was a space for a thing. Right.
Yeah.
And so my husband and I shared an office and I taught cardio dance in my living room and everything was like a joint usage
Mm.
space. And now like we've moved into a new house, we each have our own dedicated offices, so like even for us to like meet for lunch we have to like meet for lunch, we have to do that. And I have a studio, well, a
Mm.
studio, I have a floor and a curtain on the wall in my unfinished basement that is my space for teaching cardio dance. And then we have like the Peloton and we have a workout space. And it's not that any of these spaces are particularly large, it's just that there is a space for them. And so
Mm.
for me, it's like I'm going to work to teach cardio dance because I have to go to the studio, which now all of us call the studio, even though legitimately it's just a floor in the
Mm.
middle of a big open space. But it's like that's my space. And so I think that's something that's also been helpful for me is to
Yeah.
have that movement between the spaces, the conversion time, shall we say.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to add this about this ritual also, um, I used to when I started, just working from home. Sometimes I don't care, but yeah, kind of I can still wear my pajama, but kind of then I realized really part of having that ritual, kind of all right, I'm going to work even if it's just a few meters away, to really yeah, kind of make my ritual like, okay, I'm going to work now, and I dress up and like brush my teeth, and okay, now I go to my office, my home office. And I think that's also yeah, kind of help to set the mind, like, okay, like now I'm at work.
Mhm.
And then
Well, and
when
I
not,
think this
not.
it's a great example too, because even
Mm.
the action of like going to brush your teeth is like this is movement, right? Like there's
Yeah,
movement that exists in
yes,
that activity. You got to brush your teeth,
exactly.
right? Um, and wash your face. um, but like these, yeah, I'm the dance in the shower kind of person who thinks that I'm like a pop star with my singing
Mm,
voice. Um, but these are the things, right? And it doesn't have to be. I really like that you brought up the word restorative, right?
mm.
Because I think a lot of times when people think about movement, they think about fat burn and they think about
Yeah,
cardio and they think
not
about
at
those
all.
types of things.
Mm,
But there's so much movement that we can do that puts our body back into that restorative state, takes us out of the stress
mm,
state. And like, sure, if you're training for a triathlon or you're training for something, you're like specifically putting your body into
mm.
that stress state so that that can
Yeah,
have a place if that is what is real for you. But
yeah.
for to only do like stress movement and not
Mm,
to incorporate restorative movement is also unbalanced. And at the end of the day, it's just it is. We talked about diversity of movement and all these
mm.
things, right? Like it's about incorporating different things at different
Yeah,
times for different purposes. And sometimes I do really want to just go and run it out because I'm frustrated or whatever.
yeah.
And sometimes I need to just, although I've realized the meditations that I listen to almost always have music in the background. And I'm like,
Mm,
I can't. It's actually physically painful for me to try and sit here and
mm.
not move. So I started to do what I call flow meditations, which is just like I let my body move the way the music is telling my
Yeah,
body to move. And it actually helps my mind stay centered on what I'm
yeah,
listening to, what I'm
yeah,
trying to create.
yeah.
Um, and so that for me is very restorative. And another interesting thing for us all to look at is where do we have our stress movement and where do we have restorative movement? Where do we have expressive movement?
Mhm,
When do we have restrictive movement? Right? And just
mhm,
we're here to talk about the language of movement. And I feel like what we delivered on today is some new language for people to use at home and at work to help
mm.
get a little bit more of your expression out into the world.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's what
yeah,
we're here for. That's what Irene and Tracy are here for.
yeah.
More expression.
More expression and yeah, kind of we talked about the stress movement and yeah, what other things like restorative movement and so on. Like you mentioned something else.
Yeah,
What was
I
it?
said
Do you remember?
expressive
Oh, expressive
movement.
movement. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think this part, the expressive movement, can be unpacked a lot more because what are we feeling inside? You know, like sometimes it's we don't have words for it because yeah, feelings are also very nonverbal. Like we experience it like in our body,
It's true.
but then like how do we yeah, how do we acknowledge it? How do we allow it to be there, you know, without like suppressing it? Maybe like if you're angry, you're kind of angry, like okay, how to yeah, to let that anger energy out through the body, through movement in a
Yeah.
safe way, in a respectful way, without distracting your property or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, kind of like I think by nature, you know, like if we this is something very interesting like with the yeah, like runners, you know, the sprinters, like uh, when they touch the finish line, they are victorious, you know, they always like do this movement kind of like it's something that's yeah, something very natural for us. And I guess we can also be more aware, you know, like what is my happy movement, you know, what is
Mhm.
my ooh, and like I'm a bit antsy, a bit anxious movement, and not just the expression of it, but what can I do with my body to regulate that, to manage that, and
Oh,
that's kind
this
of really powerful, I think there.
now I wish we had another
Ah,
hour to talk about that one because I feel like
yeah,
here, okay, can I just celebrate conversations for a minute? Because
of
every
course.
conversation that I've had with Irene gives me a new insight into what movement means, what movement means for me. And this is the whole point about being in conversation. So I really want to celebrate everybody who is here today, being in the conversation. Andrew and Jessica and Rachel, thank you so much for sharing
Of
all your
course.
perspectives and as well.
Yeah.
Because I think this point about acknowledgement is so important, right? We have
Yeah.
a societal practice of hiding
Yeah.
emotions and pretending that
Mhm.
emotions don't exist. And what if? I love a good what if. So we're going to end with this what
Mm.
if for today, everybody, is that what if we could use our movement to acknowledge our emotions in a safe way? Right? How could each of us, I'm going to take this away and see how I
Mhm.
can acknowledge my emotion, like a greater variety of my emotions, acknowledge them through
Mm.
movement. um I'm just really excited to go on this discovery journey
Yeah,
now for
yeah,
myself.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's really
So
wonderful what if. Yeah,
yeah.
really
So
wonderful what if.
also, anybody else who's in the chat or listening to the replay who goes on that journey to explore their what if, Irene and Tracy would love to hear your answers and hear what you discover. So connect with us. Irene, with that in mind, where is the best place if people want to learn more about the language of movement and they want to
Hmm.
learn more about you and get in the conversation? Where's the best place to find you?
Best place to start is to find me on LinkedIn. Send me an invitation to connect. Say hi. And I also got a website. Yeah, because I work also with a lot of leaders who are, yeah, not perhaps not per se like they want to search for movement, but they want to find creative ways, to support their healing journey, like in their mental health, or they struggle with some heavy emotions. And yeah, that's my website. It's leadersthroughdepression.com. Yeah, so if that speaks to you, or someone who might need that support, welcome to check me out there. But just connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to have a chat and refer you to which best place I could support you.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And if you
Mm.
are on LinkedIn watching this live, then Irene's link is right on it. So you can just click on her name and it'll take you right to the profile. You don't even have to remember how to spell her last name.
Awesome. Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah.
It's just lots of multiple letters, and then people use the wrong multiple
Exactly.
letter,
Oh,
and
oh, oh, yeah.
then we can't find people. I also just want to share. Rachel shared this comment quite earlier, and we have
Mm.
to poke our heads over it because it's so long. But she's talking about the metaphors and adding spice and like enjoying the process, right?
Yeah.
There's so many things to enjoy in the exploration, and when we are
Mm.
exploring through movement, there's equal amount of things to enjoy. So with that, I hope all of you enjoy your
Mhm.
continual development of your own personal language of movement, because there's not only one language of movement, you have a
Mhm.
personal one. And that you stay in the conversation. If this is something that you are passionate about exploring for yourself, or passionate about in general, stay in the conversation. Connect with Irene, connect with myself. These are conversations that we are very passionate about, and we're always happy to continue the conversation.
Yeah.
So, with that, thank you so much for your contributions today, Irene. Thank you so much for everybody in the
Cool.
chat and your contribution. And until next time, permission to
Yeah.
do you, everybody. Bye.